over to talk to you on a tiny little city or town in the border region between Denmark and Germany called Sonderborg. Hands up, who have heard of Sonderborg? 2, 3, 4. That's fantastic. Okay. I need my little switch. Before I was appointed to become the director of the Danish Cultural Institute in Brussels, I was directing the process that I'm going to tell you about now. It was a journey I went on in 2009. Here's the town of Sonderborg. It's beautifully placed with water all around it, right on the border to Germany. So if you look over in the far distance, that's actually Germany. So that's how close we are. I was living with my husband and my children in China, in Beijing, from 2005 to 2009, and we both finished our contracts. I was working for the British Embassy, and we were going to go back to Denmark and just continue with our normal lives. And I was thinking, okay, I better get back and finish my PhD. That was hanging over my head. But then I was called by the municipality. They had an idea that they wanted to talk to me about. Before I go further, I just want to show you whereabouts in Europe we are. So you've got, can you actually see anything? It looks pretty blurry to me. But the city of Sonderborg is, as I said, right on the border between Denmark and Germany, and actually very long distance away from Copenhagen, all of 300 kilometers away from Copenhagen. So the municipality called me to say, we have an idea, we would like to make our town European capital of culture. And I thought, you must be crazy. The township of Sonderborg has 27,000 inhabitants. I think Cookstown has about the same, or 25 or so. So just imagine if someone would come forward and say, we'd like to make Cookstown European capital of culture. And we actually don't have any towns in the vicinity that are over that amount of people. So it was a totally crazy idea. And I said, look, I don't think that you're going to get far with that idea, so let's not waste each other's time. Then I started looking into the possibilities, and I found out that the city in the municipality has 76,000 inhabitants. So maybe if the city went together with the whole municipality and started talking together, we could get something out of it. And then we started looking also at what's on the other side of the border. Well, there is the Duchy of Schleswig with a big town called Flensburg with 120,000 inhabitants. That started sounding like something. In the bigger region of the southern part of Denmark, there is about 1.2 million people. On the German side, there was like 2.8 million people, and together we're 4 million people in our border region. The entire population of Denmark is just 5 million. So all of a sudden we were not just a tiny little city, but we're suddenly a big partnership of people, provided all of these different sectors would be interested and able to talk together. In addition to the population, I can also mention that there is a German minority on the Danish side of the border and a Danish minority on the German side of the border. And you'd be very familiar with all of these situations because you are in a border region yourself. But where we are a little bit different to you is that we don't speak the same language. So they speak German, we speak Danish. Not only that, we also have our dialects on either side of the border, and we also have quite a fair amount of Roma people and Frisians. And that is a challenge. Just to give you an idea of the region, you might have heard some of these names, like the Wadden Sea, that has the bird flock as a characteristic. As our part of Denmark where we are famous for our coffee table. So back in the old days when my mother would invite her girlfriends over at the farm for afternoon coffee, there'd be 17 different cakes. And you had to taste each and every cake. And they're just passed around and you take a little bit. So even if you didn't finish the previous bit, you must take the next. Now the reason we have this coffee table tradition is because when we're at war with Germany, they were forbidding us to meet in the pubs. We just built some community centres, and we would meet up and have coffee and cake. And because there was a lot to talk about, they had to make a lot of cakes. That's how that came about. The Legoland, some of you might have heard about, or at least the Lego bricks. That's from our region. Hans Christian Andersen also comes from our region and is a little known around the place. We also have a big industrial company of Danfoss. Some of you might have heard about it. They invented the radiator thermostat. Just a little boy, a nerdy boy sitting in a farmhouse, playing after school with an idea that became the radiator thermostat. Some people believed in him, and today they employ 35,000 people around the world. A little similar, the story with the guy who developed the Echo shoe. Has anyone heard about the shoe brand called Echo? One? More? Okay, whoa. That's impressive. Well, they also live where I come from. Now, this is a very interesting mill. It's a symbol of Denmark, the mill. The mill is positioned on a battlefield, the battlefield of Düppel. That's where there was a fierce war of 1864, when the Prussians and the Austrians combined came and stole a third of Denmark, and Denmark became totally traumatized. And then we decided to turn our backs to Europe and the world with a slogan, what's lost outwardly must be inwardly won. So we just started talking to each other and caring about each other, became great designers, but we lost connection to the world. And that's not a good idea when we're in a situation where we're now in a globalized reality where you need to interact with the whole world. Denmark, similar to the UK, has an ambiguous relationship with the EU as an institution. We like to just scoop as much money out of it as we can, but otherwise they can leave us alone. We're a long way away from Copenhagen, 300 kilometers. So right on the border, the people in the region where I come from feel pretty much pushed to the periphery. In Copenhagen, they keep talking about that part of Denmark as outskirt. Some people even refer to it as a rotten banana, because looking at it demographically and economically, the peninsula of Denmark sort of sways similarly to a banana. And so over in Copenhagen, where they think they know everything, they just see this as a rotten banana. That's a problem of Denmark. That's where people have a lower than average education. It's where there's unemployment, and where they have all these problems with infrastructure and so on. But anyway, we have a big story to tell the world. because we were able to turn an against each other to a for each other. So we used to kill each other in this region and hate each other. And then we decided to start getting on. And we get on pretty well. We get on so well that we cooperate. But there's still a clear border between us. And why? Well, there are several reasons for that. It's not just a national border. It's also a border of communication. I can read in my local newspaper what goes on sort of 100 kilometers north of where I live, which is Denmark, but I can't read what happens 20k south of me. It doesn't say in my local paper because I read a Danish local paper. So we have an information border. And we have a language border, as I was mentioning before. That's two borders. Then we have a totally different culture. Germans, quite simply, are different to Danes. So, as a Dane, we think that the Germans are very workaholic. They like precision. They always turn up on time. So when I go to Germany to give a presentation, I always put on my dark suit. In Denmark, I just wear jeans and a t-shirt for official meetings. We also have to moderate our language, and they don't crack jokes the way we crack jokes. So there's a big cultural difference. Also in the way we do things. The Danes have a pretty anarchistic approach to doing things. So we just say, let's do it just for the heck of it, just see what happens. And the Germans will plan everything very in much detail before they do anything. And then once they've drawn up a plan, they stick to it. Whereas we might deviate from it just for the sake of deviating from it. So a lot of borders, and on top of that, the national border. But in 1955, there was a treaty signed between Bonn, the capital of Germany back in those days, and Copenhagen, to give rights to the minorities on either side. Actually, I have to just go a little bit back in time. I don't know if you know that the way the border was drawn between Denmark and Germany was after the First World War. So in 1920, there was a plebiscite. So they went out and asked people, do you feel that you would like to go to live in Germany or in Denmark? And so the border was drawn in a democratic way. And to my knowledge, there is only one other existing border in Europe that also happened through a democratic process, and that is the border between Austria and Slovenia. Well, that treaty gave the minorities equal rights to the majority, which means, of course, you start talking in eye level with each other. And that has brought about a lot of positive results, because all these minorities are contributing with their cultural diversity, their diversity of language, with the richness of being different and not feeling inferior, but having the right to speak up and be at the same level with everyone else. So we have a great history, and we also have a great nature, and we have big companies earning a lot of money, but we still have a problem. We have a big problem. Because young people are leaving our region. And I told you about the periphery image. And we're not fully mobilizing or making use of the cultural diversity, the potential in the cultural diversity and in internationalization, and the potential there is in working across that border. So looking at the chart, it's a demographic development over the next years. So this was in 2011, and this is 2031. Well, in all of Denmark, this unfortunately is written in Danish, all of Denmark, the blue line indicates the increase in population until 2031. The green line is the development in the entire region. quite a large region. But just look at the pink line, that's the prediction for Sonderborg. That looks pretty grim. So if these guys don't do something radically, they're going to end up an old people's home. And they might as well close shop, because they're not going to have enough taxes to sustain a future. So what to do? That's the burning platform, sense of urgency. That's when I came in, and they said, we want to be European capital of culture, with the story of how we turned it against each other to for each other. And I said, look, I don't think that's going to be enough. I think we need to try to find out, do we have an issue? And yes, we do have an issue. You just saw the chart. There's a big issue. We need to do something, urgently. And instead of just sitting back and thinking up a solution, we went out and confronted the whole community with this issue that we had discovered, and saying to them, what do you think about it? So we went out to the schools, went to the kindergartens, we went to the old people's homes, to the local communities, clubs, to the business sector, to educational institutions, and we had all these discussions. We didn't go and say, look, we have this problem and we need to solve it, come up with a solution. But we just said, these are some of the issues that we think there are. Do you think that there are some other issues? And rather what we'd like you to discuss is, what are your hopes, dreams and wishes for the future? So try to imagine yourself in this region in 20 years. How would you like this region to look like? And looking at what we know, how does that fit in with where we are now? And what do we need to do from now until where you would like to be in your dream? Well, that took a lot of time, talking to all these people and collecting all the information. We also asked the young people, rather than sitting down and writing reports, to just make some paintings of what they were hoping and wishing for the future. Reciting poetry, dancing, singing, whatever. So we involved people everywhere we could possibly get around to doing it. And then we came back to the idea of European Capital of Culture. And the reason we came back to that is because we realized that we need to have some kind of a driver. We need to have some kind of carrot that we can get all these 4 million people to reach for. And the European Capital of Culture candidacy is a little bit exciting. It's a bit like sports, competition. It's, yeah, let's go for it. You know, we want to beat the opponent. Now, before I go further, I have to tell you that there was one other contestant to this title in Denmark. It's a city called Aarhus, and I know that some of you have heard about that city. It's the second largest city in Denmark. Copenhagen could not go for the European Capital of Culture title. We're talking about the year 2017, that is Denmark's turn to have the title. So Copenhagen could not have it because they've already had it back in 1996 when it was Denmark's turn the last time. So then the city of Aarhus thought, okay, we're the second largest city of Denmark, of course we'll get it. And so they made it clear to all of Denmark that they were going to be European Capital of Culture, until this tiny little town in the border region said, so do we. And everyone went, ha ha ha, you must be joking. This is not serious. But they learned otherwise. So we realized that we have to get everybody involved in this journey. So the citizens, the politicians, at all levels, at local level, regional level, national level, and we also have to go to the EU and involve our politicians down there. We had to get all the cultural institutions involved, all the artists, business sector, and of course in our region the business sector is not as advanced as they are in your region. So for most of them to hear about culture and creativity as something that would interest them was a lot of work. Even if we have all these creative companies that are selling all over the world, like Echo, Lego, and Danfoss, and so on. And the tourism sector, well, in our region we have a lot of tourists, because as you saw, it's pretty. So we have a lot of German tourists coming to our region to go sailing. But they don't leave behind a lot of money. Usually they pack their cars with food, because food is cheaper in Germany, and they buy all the cheap beer and wine and stuff, drive across the border, and just use our waters to have a good holiday. Well, looking globally, we know that culture tourism amounts to 40% of tourism in the world, culture tourism. And that a culture tourist leaves behind 40% more money than a conventional tourist. So it's easy to understand why cultural tourism is very important. In Denmark, culture tourism amounts to, what do you think, how many percent? 4% of Danish tourism is culture tourism. That's in all of Denmark. So if I would try to find out what it is for this tiny little town, we're probably down to below 1%. So the tourism sector got a big wake-up call in this whole process. Educational sector, organizations, associations, and so on. When you go out and want to tell people a story, give them a message, you need to be able to ensure that what you say is also what is understood. So I can be here talking, and you may not understand what I'm talking about. So what's the point of that? So we really had to sit down, all of us, all these, like the students and the people from the old people's home and so on and so forth, to try to find out what language are we talking, what do we mean when we say such and such and such. So that if we say tree, you also hear tree and you see a tree in front of you and not a white elephant. So communication is really important. How you communicate what it is you want to bring across. And then you also need to think about the Maslow pyramid of needs. So who are you actually speaking to? So I can be speaking to a group of artists that all know and appreciate arts and culture. But then I go out to the old people's home and I tell them, art and culture is very important. And they say, sure, but we've had so many cuts on the budgets in the municipality that we can only have a bath every third week because of all the cuts. So why do you have to spend money on something like that? And you go to the schools and the parents tell us, they just closed 3 schools. And you want all this money to run a candidacy? You must be crazy. So you need to understand who you're speaking to. First of all, what sector are you speaking to? But you also need to understand where are people on the pyramid, the Maslow pyramid. And you need to make a whole series of what we call the elevator pitch that you probably all know about. So keep it short and simple, and tailor your pitch to whoever you speak to, so that you make sure that your message comes across. So what came out of this long process that we were doing? Well, collecting all the information, it was agreed that we need to start turn around I told you before, we were living with our back to Europe and the world, so turn around and start engaging with the world. Look out and be a part of the whole world. That's what especially the young people were saying. You've messed up. What about us? What about our future? And it also came out that the diversity, the cultural diversity in our region is a trademark, it's special. And we also even developed a new phrase, we call it cultural intelligence. We think we are culturally intelligent in our region. But we think that we need to be even more culturally intelligent. What do we mean by that? We mean the ability to theoretically know that people are different. We are all different. And not just different in our different nationalities, but also in our different sectors. So my husband is an engineer. I really often don't understand what he's on about. And he thinks what I talk about is crazy, because he cannot put it into an Excel arc. But I know that he's an engineer, and I know how his brain works. And so I try to accommodate for it, and he sometimes accommodates for my thinking. So you know in your mind that there is a difference, but then you need to open your heart. You need to want the other people. You need to embrace and really want to understand who these other people are, what makes them tick. And then you need to act on it. You need to do something to show that you have understood step 1 and step 2. That's what we call cultural intelligence. Every day of my life I meet Germans. They're all over the place. And they meet us. And so we constantly have to be confronted with, we have to switch over and speak their language. We have to think, oh, they don't understand because they do it that way, so I have to... So we have different terms of references. I cannot just sit and talk about my daily routine and what I'm brought up, the culture I was brought up in, because they don't necessarily understand it. And we think that that is something really valuable in the future, to be culturally intelligent, because that's the only way we're going to be able to compete in the world. This is some of the writing we came up with. We did very little writing. We spent most of the time being together, talking, coming up with ideas. But we had to start writing a few things down. And these 4 points were the basis of our candidacy. So we wanted to develop a periphery Danish-German border region into a prosperous culture region through smart, sustainable and inclusive development of the culture and creative sectors. So the ones of you that work with strategy have already picked up that we're tapping into the European 2020 strategy to make sure that what we do on a local level fits into the regional level, fits into the national level, fits into what Europe wants, fits into what happens in the world. And so that you don't just do something because you think it's a good idea if it doesn't fit into what the rest of the world are doing. We want to underline the value of cultural diversity of a border region and to strengthen the cultural intelligence and to facilitate cooperation between the local community, culture, agents, artists, business sector, in other words, working across all sectors, just pulling down all the silos and let's work across all the sectors and ways that we've never worked before. And then the last one. That's the one that brought the thinking in a totally new direction. To challenge the physical and psychological borders in the region in order to bring about a mind change from an outskirt and poor region to a countryside metropolis. So someone came up with countryside metropolis. We were running a process without knowing what was going to happen. So the politicians, they were really courageous. They let us go crazy. They said, just have a go at it and see what happens. Normally you have to sit and plan everything and you have to more or less predict the outcome. But we were allowed to do your experiment. Steve, is that what you're, yeah. your experiment of this morning, the Big Bang, the clash of the particles. And out of the clash of the particles came countryside metropolis. Because a lot of the people were saying that we don't want to put up with having this image because it's only the people over in Copenhagen who think that we're outskirts. When we go to the borderline between Denmark and Germany, we don't fall over the edge. It's not the end of Denmark. The world, yeah, it's the end of Denmark, but the world continues. And we have just 2 hours drive to Hamburg, 3 hours drive to Berlin, but we have a 3-hour drive to Copenhagen. Well, to be fair, I think that Berlin is a somewhat more exciting city than Copenhagen. It's cheaper too, so I tend to go to Berlin. Germany is also our biggest customer, so we better be friends with them. We also found out in this process that living where we're living is a great place. It's very similar to where you live here. A lot of little towns on either side of the border. We have a fantastic life. We have beautiful nature, calmness, and we have the internet. So we can sit anywhere we like and be connected to the world. So we are a countryside, but at the same time we are also a metropolis. But we don't have to have all the bad aspects of the metropolis, like the pollution, the stress and all of that. Of course, we all have stressful lives, but we have the possibility of stepping out of our stressful lives and out into the beautiful countryside. So we have moments, we have breaks between our busy, stressful lives where we're actually in touch with nature. That's where we get connected and we find out what it's all about. People who live in big metropolises, they don't get that. So they have to rush out of the metropolis at weekends, in their holidays, to get this paradise that we live in every day. And so if I really feel like big city life, I just get in my car, on the train, and I go to Berlin, or Hamburg, or Copenhagen if I must. What the young people were saying is, yeah, provincial is cool. So we took out their slogan and we made some buttons, and within some months you'd see loads of young people running around going to the discos at night, provincial is cool. And they'd go to Copenhagen on school excursions with their buttons, provincial is cool. And it was all their idea, and they just did it, they just took ownership of that. And that's a very important thing, because there were 2 people in the municipality phoning me because they had an idea. So together we sat down and got some more ideas, and then we realized that it's not up to us, we have to involve all the community, everybody. And once we started engaging everybody in this process, they took ownership and they became ambassadors. So they went out there doing all the work, basically. And this is something that I think is really important, to make sure that you get ownership of whatever idea you have, whatever process you want to bring about. So the countryside metropolis, they define as a combination of city life with country life in cooperation with Europe and the world. They decided that, so that's what it became. And then they also came up with, they made some stamps, you know, the Facebook we like, and that became the symbol on all the emails from all the municipalities and the region on either side of the border. They actually just adopted that, so that every time an email went out of the offices, it had that 2017 we like. Then we were very lucky with the logo for Sonderborg, because the S also is the same for the region of South Denmark and Schleswig. So SSS, and we couldn't very well call it SS. So it became the half S 2017 we like. Talking about how to communicate. So communicating to the business sector and people who don't really value arts and culture, we had to get some hardcore figures on the table. And that wasn't difficult because there's been European Capital of Culture since 1985, so there's a lot of studies, a lot of reports written, so we were just taking all these figures from excellent reports that have been written. Actually, the best socioeconomic study that was ever made was made by a British company called Impact 08, or a group of researchers in connection with Liverpool being European Capital of Culture back in 2010, I think. No, 2008. So, being a European Capital of Culture and working with arts and culture as a driver has proven that it gives an increase of 2.6% of employment in that sector, and that it attracts audiences with tertiary educations over 30% over the EU average, increase in tourism. The next one, that was the one that was really interesting and good, easy to understand for most business people, that €1 generates between 7 and 8 on return on investment. But my favorite is the last one. It creates pride and optimism. Pride to a region that is called a rotten banana. To suddenly turn around to say, okay, that's what you might think, but we now know otherwise. So the pride and the optimism, the belief in being able to create a future, being able to create a brand of a cross-border region where young people would think, whoa, that sounds interesting. We didn't think of that. They're offering this. Let's go and try it out. We have a university in our town, and it's been experiencing a very great increase in enrollments from running this process. So we're back to our competitor, trying to convince all these people thinking that we were crazy, contesting against the second largest city of Denmark. And we had to come up with these figures to show that European capitals of culture sometimes have been very small cities, as you can see. So right down to 52. And then we're trying to convince the jury that they should not look at us as just a city of 27,000, but rather as a municipality of 76,000, so we're big. They didn't quite believe us. And that story that I've been telling you needs to be communicated over and over again. So you go out and you use your networks and your networks of networks, and the way that happens is by making sure you plant an ownership, that you have the courage to let go. You have the courage of not finding it necessary to steer everything, to control. You know how we often tend to be afraid to leave a door open. So let people go crazy, let them take the message in the way where they see it fit. Because believe me, something good will come out of it. And let them spread the message in all their networks. So this tiny little town of Sonderborg suddenly became known all over Europe. Not everywhere, admittedly, but there were places that became or started to get to know about this town that had never heard about it before. It was even mentioned in the parliament yesterday. We also had to get some other hardcore ambassadors to second our ideas. And everything that was happening in the entire region in that 3.5-year process, people would think up ways of connecting their activity with this S2017, countryside metropolis. And then they would brand it and say, well, this is also countryside metropolis. This is also an example of countryside metropolis. And they'd go off and talk to the media about it, and everyone became very enthusiastic. Had a website made, of course, a Facebook group, And the young people were saying, we want our own platform. And we said, that's a good idea. And I said, yeah, we want to start a movement. And so they called it the movement of doing something about it. We are going to start doing something about the situation we're in. So this is their website, the movement of doing something about it, Creative Young, 2017. There were 2 rounds in this competition, first round, second round. Got through the first round and produced 2 magazines, and the second round are the 2 publications on the left. All of these publications can be found on the internet, where you can read them if you're interested. And we gave the application, or the program, a contest. We called it Connect, Confront and Celebrate, because we think that you need to connect to make things happen. You also need to confront. We know that by confronting the past, our dilemma with the Germans and the other way around, we know that something good came out of that confrontation, the courage to confront. And then once you've connected and confronted, you want to celebrate. So arts and culture should also be about, or should be about, celebrating, having fun. One of the artistic programs that we were saying, if we become European Capital of Culture, this is what we want to do. The first thing we want to do is to train people to become creative producers, to be able to deliver arts and culture. We have a lot of great artists, we have a lot of public servants, but do we have people who know how to combine the both, who know how to make business out of art and art out of business? They are the kind of profiles we thought that we need to train people to be able to do that. So we called it the Border Region Artist Development Network, and a handy abbreviation was Brandy. Everyone could remember that. And the Brandy project was about, and actually is about, because it's one of the successes of the process, has started to work now, is to explore the cross-sector between arts and business, training people, doing projects. Another project under the heading of Connect was the art farm. So in our region we have more pigs than people. Pigs everywhere, except we never see them because they're in barns. You're not allowed, they have to be protected against our germs. But we have so many pigs and we're reliant on the pigs, so we thought, let's celebrate the pig. So instead of having a big concert in an arts house in the town, we said we're going to have a centre on the art farm, agricultural farm, where we will celebrate the pig, where we will teach people about farming, about food, and about what the value of the pig industry is for our region. And then to top it all off, we're going to have a pig's tango, like a 4-4 tango with 4 pigs. And we got hold of an animal trainer in Leipzig. And together with a symphony orchestra, we have a symphony orchestra in town, they're going to perform the pig tango. Yeah. The next project on that battlefield, remember the battlefield I told you about, the War of 1864? Something I didn't know was that was the first time Red Cross was in action. The very first time at that war. So we were going to do a project of healing the battlefield. So we cooperated with Red Cross to engage with all the Red Cross centres around the world, and we're going to do this virtual celebration of planting flags on battlefields around the whole world where Red Cross has been active. That was a way of involving the whole world. And then of course our coffee table. Celebrate, let's get together and celebrate our cake tradition, but not just our own cake tradition. So we decided to have 11-kilometer coffee table going across the Danish-German border, and then to invite people from all over Europe, say, come to our coffee table, come to our homes, move into our homes, borrow our ovens, and make some cakes from your country. And then we put all the different cakes from all the different countries about Europe, put it on the coffee table, and we celebrate. However, we didn't win. So how cool is that? We were number 2, but we didn't win. But the added value of this candidacy has brought about a lot of different things. First of all, last year in April, the Minister of Germany, Culture Minister of Germany and the Culture Minister of Denmark signed a treaty to say we will work across border and prioritize culture. And all the municipalities and the regional level of either side of the border have put money together to finance a 4-year cross-border cultural cooperation. I think that's fantastic. We also formed what we call a cultural mafia. So we have now a network of all the culture creative people, and we meet every now and again. I think 5 times a year they meet to exchange ideas, to learn new things, cross-border theatre, arts festivals. A lot of more new ideas have come on the table, new partnership, new networks. The business sector becoming interested in the arts and culture and engaging, giving money, but also employing artists in their companies. Increased media attention locally, nationally, and European-wide. And we've actually managed to commit the politicians to the value of arts and culture. And that took a long time. I think, to be quite frank, in the beginning, the politicians didn't really realize what they were going into. They were just letting this can of worms be opened up, and then it was only at the point of no return that some of them were getting a little anxious about what was going on. But that was only for a little while until they also began to realize the benefit of it. And today, the politicians are really committed, I have to say, are really committed to arts and culture. So it became not just going for the European Capital of Culture candidacy, it was about building a strategy for the future. The European Capital of Culture candidacy was just a catalyst, was just some extra muscles that would have been really great had we been getting it. We didn't get it, and we're not used to be getting things. You know that from this region. We're used to no one serving anything on a silver platter. We always have to come up with our own new ways. So we just have to keep working hard, roll our sleeves up and keep working hard, because we know that we will manage to get where we need to get. And the chairman of the jury, there was a 13-member jury, 7 people from 7 different European countries, 6 Danish jury members deciding, and 6 votes went for Sonderborg and 7 votes went for Aarhus. So we were giving them competition. They didn't see that come, but they were getting really nervous, but they still won. But the chairman of the jury said that that our application had a very strong potential and that it was a model for Europe, and that they felt that the drive, the eagerness of the people in the region, because they actually came to visit us. And personally, he said that he felt that they were not ready for it, this cross-border idea. And they also found that the artists of our region really were longing for and needing development. So their advice was to continue the process, which they did. And I can't say we anymore because I deserted them to go and live in Brussels. My final word, reach for the moon, even if you miss it. You will land amongst the stars. Thank you.